Alice and I are always looking to be more healthy, and we were just talking about how fasting is one of the best ways to do that, but it's so hard. But the great thing about Prolon is that's not what you're doing. It's not that you're not eating for 5 days. Instead, you're using their science-backed program to convince your body you're fasting.
You guys, this 5-day program really is amazing. It comes beautifully packaged and it does all the thinking for you. Each day is its own box. And by following their program, I know I just feel so much better. And I can't wait to experience Prolong Next Gen and continue to see results. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at special savings. Prolong is offering the Prosecutors listeners 15% off site-wide plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Just visit prolonlife.com/prosecutors. That's PROLONLIFE.com/prosecutors to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/prosecutors.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Today on the Prosecutors, a young woman vanishes on the campus of Kent State University. To this day, no sign of Judy Martins has ever been found, and her case remains unsolved. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined, as always, by my bodacious co-host, Alice.
Hey, Brett. That's an English word, so congratulations. You've gone back to the English language.
Bodacious.
And thanks. Yeah. I feel anything but bodacious. Brett just looked at my face, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "This is how I always look. I'm just tired."
Whatever, Alice. Quit complaining. Rub some dirt on it.
It's true. Throw some dirt on it.
If we weren't recording this in September, I probably would have made some sort of election pun, because today is election day for those of you in the United States.
Oh, that's
if you're listening
crazy.
to this. So get out there and vote.
Remember, man.
I'll tell you the same thing I told you 4 years ago. If your person wins, they won't be as good as you think they're going to be. If the other guy wins, they won't be as bad as you think they're going to be. So you'll be disappointed either way.
That's a nice reminder. That's a nice reminder, and that's as much politics as we'll get into today, because I'm sure you'll get inundated with it all day, every day.
The good thing is the political ads are over. If you've made it this far, all the stupid texts and ads and television ads, we get a reprieve. That's always my favorite thing. It's like a celebration.
They've been on fire. I get so much spam email. I'm like, who's been selling my information?
It's the text messages that kill me. It's like, quit texting me.
A lot of text messages. Yes, this is true.
But I guess it raises money. I don't know. Anyways. So, yeah, we got a new case today for you guys. I hope you enjoyed October. Like I said, it's September for us, so we haven't actually experienced it yet, but we have recorded the episodes. But I had a great Halloween. It was amazing, I'm sure. I mean, I'd be shocked if it wasn't. Eventually, when we record in like Christmas or whatever, December, you guys will hear how Halloween actually went. So one problem with being so far ahead is we're always like out of sync with the events going on in people's lives.
Or is that better? Because people always say it's nice to escape into a story that is like kind of separated from all of the craziness that is the world. I know I personally like that. So, except these days, instead of listening to any podcast, I just sit in silence. Anyone else?
There you
with
go.
Small children?
Silence is great.
Silence is golden, man.
Today,
but don't put us
case.
on silent. Listen to us.
Today, I had to go pick up food because we ordered out. And I was going to go pick up. So I drove to the restaurant, and I got there, and they were like, "Oh, we're so sorry. We literally just now seeing your order, so we're going to have to make it." And I was like, I guess I'm just going to have to sit at the bar by myself. It's going to be rough. You guys take your time. And I sat there and it was amazing. I loved it.
Isn't it amazing? Like I traveled. By the way, I was just in Kansas City. What a fine city. I really mean that. Like I was there for less than 24 hours, but I showed up at the hotel. Everyone was so nice there. I got on the elevator. Everyone was so nice there. I was there for 24 hours and it was like 24 hours of kindness. Anyways, I was very impressed, Kansas City. But I was on my way to Kansas City in the airport and, on the plane, put my earbuds in, silent. Just didn't want anyone to talk to me. I was like, it was noise canceling. It was amazing. I almost missed my flight because I didn't hear them call. Didn't matter. It was quiet.
The number of times I've put my earbuds in and just didn't even turn them on, just so nobody would talk to me. It's a very effective strategy. But then you always have that one person who keeps talking to you and you keep taking them out and you're like,
I don't care.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you're going to Cleveland. Anyway.
Glad you're going to Cleveland. All right.
Speaking of Cleveland, Speaking
of Cleveland, not specifically Cleveland, but Ohio, this case actually completely boggled my mind when I started looking into it because there's so little information, but it's riveting because I have no idea how this happened, how someone can essentially disappear into thin air, someone who's very connected on a college campus, in fact, and that I hadn't ever heard of this case. That last part is the one that really surprised me because it has all the elements of being splashed across every single news channel. But somehow, I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't heard it either.
Yeah, this case is just as mysterious as Brian Schaefer. It's just as mysterious as Maura Murray. But for some reason, it hasn't gotten as much attention as you might expect. And that's one reason we wanted to cover it. I had never heard of this case. I do want to thank Aislinn, who actually is in the chat right now, so you guys be nice to her, for bringing this case to our attention and providing a ton of information on it. She was kind enough to speak with me. And also Dave O'Brien from the Chronicle Telegram, who has covered this extensively. I think he's kind of obsessed with this case, and you're going to see why this is the kind of case you can become obsessed with. Thank you so much to him as well for talking through this case with us. We really appreciate it. And look, we tell you this all the time. We cover a lot of famous cases, but we are always looking for good cases that aren't that well covered. Aislinn probably emailed us, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago. It takes a while sometimes to get to things. But when we did, I was really glad we did. And we never could have covered this case without her help. So don't be shy. Shoot us an email, prosecutorspod@gmail.com. That's the best way to suggest a case. And if you are somebody who has information, please send it our way. And I just want to give sort of a shout out for making these cases your own. We talk about these cases a lot, and sometimes we'll say, we really want to bring attention to the case. But the fact of the matter is, we cover for a week or 2 weeks, and then we move on to the next case. And it's always nice when there are people who become interested in a case. I'll tell you this, we just did some updates on the Aisha degree, and it was amazing how many people from the area, Shelby, North Carolina, reached out to us, some of whom had not heard of the case before we talked about it, and they were able to provide tons of information they were getting on the ground. So take ownership of these cases, and you really can make a difference. Today, we're talking about the case, the disappearance of Judy Martins. And I think I've probably blabbed enough, so we'll go ahead and dive in. So Judy Martins was born July 15th, 1955 in Avon Lake, Ohio. She was the oldest of 3 siblings with both a younger sister and a younger brother. After graduating high school in 1973, Judy enrolled at Ohio University, where she spent 2 years studying. Now, at some point, she kind of became homesick. Ohio University was a good ways away from where she was from. Avon Lake is close to Cleveland. So if you're familiar with Ohio, it's up in the north part of Ohio. Ohio University is down in Miami. And so she moved back home briefly. She took some time off from school, but she didn't give up on her education. She enrolled at Kent State University. Those of you probably have heard of Kent State. It's sort of famous for an unfortunate reason, the Kent State massacre that happened back in the early 70s, the anti-war movement, the National Guard actually fired on some Kent State University students and killed some. It's sort of a famous event during that period, and it was sort of famous for that, but at this point, it's attempting to move forward. And it's actually a question. That's not just a historical tidbit. As we get more into this case, we're going to talk about how maybe the press from that and Kent State's attempt to move on from having sort of a bad reputation may have affected this case. But Judy, whatever the circumstances that brought her there, she flourished at Kent State. She was a good student. She put her education first. She was majoring in art with a minor in women's studies. She had hopes of becoming a therapist or a counselor. That's what she wanted to do. She wanted to help people after she graduated. And in fact, she was volunteering as a counselor at Kent State's Pregnancy Information Center. She was known as being outgoing, friendly, and she was passionate about service. She really seems like a good person. You don't want to fall into the whole she lit up every room she walked into trap, but she seems like the kind of person that everybody loved. She really didn't have many enemies at all. In fact, she had a ton of friends, and she was known as being the life of the party. She was busy with her studies, but she remained close with her family, especially with her younger sister, Nancy.
In May of 1978, 22-year-old Judy was a junior at the university, and she was just preparing for a fun Memorial Day weekend with friends in New York. But this was a trip she would never get to go on, because on May 24th, Judy vanished during a 5-minute walk to her dorm room. In the nearly 50 years since then, little has been discovered about Judy's disappearance, and little is known about that 5-minute walk, what may have happened during that time. There are many reasons why this case has gone cold, but many point to the university's reluctance to react initially to Judy's disappearance as kind of the main reason that so little is known still 50 years later. They claim it was because they believed Judy had gone off voluntarily, but many speculate this is more likely the result of the university looking to avoid a PR nightmare coming off the back of the 1970 Kent State shootings that Brett just mentioned. Regardless of the cause, Judy's family has spent nearly half a century looking for answers. And unfortunately, this won't be the first or the last case we see where some institution, usually a college, is going to want to avoid some sort of PR nightmare and doesn't act quickly enough. I understand we're dealing with a population that is kind of newly independent, right? Like you have young adults who have just barely become adults who have a lot of freedoms. They usually live by themselves for the first time. They have their own cars. They have credit cards or money. And many kids are going off for the weekends like Judy was planning to do. So I understand maybe the initial reaction of, oh, there's nothing wrong. She's not really missing. She's just gone off somewhere. Except when you find out more about the case, and this was not some troubled Judy who was a recluse, who wasn't in contact with people. This is someone who was very enmeshed in her community, in her family, was just coming from a party and was going to her dorm room where she lived by herself. But that 5-minute period forever changed everyone who knew Judy's life. And I'm not going to lie, I almost choked a little bit when I heard that 1978 was almost 50 years ago. That makes me not feel young, I'll say that much. But there is always hope. With Aisha Degree, we thought that case was stone cold. There are developments now. Hopefully, by talking about this, there are witnesses still alive, very well alive, who may know something and they may not know they know something, especially because this case it gets so little publicity that maybe if you listen to this or know someone who lived in the area around then, make them aware of this case, because as we dive into the timeline, you'll see just how mysterious this entire event is.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Wondery.
Yeah, I'll offer a correction. Ohio is in Athens. Miami is in Miami. So I don't know why I got that mixed up. The second thing, Alice is absolutely right. This case, it's funny. You cover enough cases, you start to see the same beats over and over, and you start to see the same mistakes and the same shortcomings. And this case has echoes of basically every case that we've covered that involves something happening on a campus. It has something else that we've also seen before too, which is a holiday. Before we did true crime, I never thought about how dangerous holidays are, but there are so many cases that are unsolved that happen around a holiday because people's routines are different and there are fewer people around. And it just seems like things can happen. And because it sometimes takes a while to realize that something's wrong, you can have these mysteries develop. And we've seen that a lot. And this is going to be another one. Let's dive in the timeline and we'll see that. We'll start in early May 1978. Jim Young, who is a name you're going to hear a few times, that was Judy's ex-boyfriend. I believe they either met at Ohio University or they knew each other from her hometown, but he did not live in Kent. He did not go to Kent State, but he visited her at Kent State. And he reported, or he would later report, that Judy was in a happy mood during her visit. And this was the last time that he would see Judy, at least according to him. They had broken up about 5 months before this, but apparently they were still friends, and when he visited her, they weren't intimate during this visit. I think that's important just because it shows that this is not a relationship that's over. Obviously, we're going to talk about somebody who's going to disappear, and unfortunately, probably something horrible happened to. You can never not look at people who are in a relationship, in a previous relationship, a relationship that's kind of, on again, off again. It's not hard, and I'm not saying this is what happened here, but it's not hard to imagine a scenario where people break up, 5 months pass, they get back together, then one of the parties is expecting something more to come out of this, and when it doesn't, they're disappointed. So Jim Young is someone we're going to talk about a lot as we go through this. He's someone to keep in the back of your mind. That's early May 1978, not long before Judy disappears. On May 19th, 1978, Judy will talk to her mother on the phone. She didn't seem distressed, and her mother reported there were no family issues and there was nothing going on in Judy's life that would make you think she might do something drastic, whether to harm herself or to leave her life or anything along those lines. She also didn't report that she was having any trouble with anyone, that she was in any kind of fear. We've seen cases where there was something going on behind the scenes, and you sort of saw that based on hints from things that were said by the person to their family members. We don't have any of that. And that was May 19th, 1978.
That brings us to Tuesday, May 23rd, 1978. So sometime between noon and 1 p.m., Judy talked to her ex-boyfriend, Jim Young, on the phone. He reported that she did not seem disturbed or upset over anything, just a regular conversation. Now, as Brett mentioned before, they're not dating at this time, but obviously they're still in contact. Jim was on house arrest at this time for shooting some guns while he was drunk. He'd previously shot himself in the knee at a bar. So that's why they're on a phone call, because he couldn't go anywhere. He was at home. But I think it's also worth noting kind of what he's on house arrest for. It is for shooting guns, but it kind of sounds like a stupid drunken accident, and he doesn't appear to be like a violent person because the only person he'd really only shot was himself, probably because he was drunk and not necessarily trying to go after someone.
And it seems like Jim, he definitely had an issue with alcohol. He would get drunk, he would shoot guns, shoot himself in the knee, shoot out of his apartment window. I think he shot his windows out at one point. He is on house arrest. I don't think it's like house arrest now. I don't know that he had like a beeper on, so it's not that it would have been impossible for him to leave. But, he's probably not in a situation where he's necessarily just going to make a jaunt down to campus, make the hour-and-a-half drive or whatever to campus, given his situation. He definitely has some instability. He's had sort of a rough life. He's obviously had some of these abuse problems, which are, once again, just things to keep in the back of your mind as you're moving through this case.
Around 1 o'clock that day, James Cradgick, a fellow KSU student whom Judy briefly dated, reports seeing her in Prentice Hall cafeteria. He said that Judy was sitting with one of her friends, Kevin Greer. So, of course, the police talked to Kevin. Kevin reports he was eating lunch with Judy and another student named Steve. James Cradgick approached them and borrowed some coupons from Judy. She told him to make sure he pays her back because she would need them before the end of the year. Again, this is noteworthy because so far we have everyone who sees her or talks to her saying that everything seems pretty normal. Again, she's not isolated. She's not eating by herself. She doesn't seem down. In fact, she's sitting amongst friends and having kind of regular somewhat mundane conversations about paying back coupons. And if you were planning to run away, for example, and never use coupons again in the area, you wouldn't care if someone took your coupons and never paid them back. So it's noteworthy that she says, I plan on using them sometime this year, so don't forget to pay me back. That
Absolutely.
should cut against the whole running off voluntarily.
I think that's absolutely right. If she had, this would be significant if she was like, you can have them all. And I think these coupons were used to buy food in the cafeteria. I guess you could pay with cash, you could pay with coupons. We had like a card that had special whatever on it that you could use in the cafeteria. We're going to throw a lot of names at you. There are a lot of people we're going to mention just because they had interactions with her on the last day. And this is the last day. So even interactions that would otherwise be mundane suddenly become really important in this case. So I know that's annoying when there's a lot of names. It gets confusing. We'll try and keep it clear. But these are all people who saw her that last day. And so you have to at least take a look at them when you're thinking about what happened.
Right. So later that night, from about 6 to 8 p.m., Judy goes to dinner with her good friend, Robin Chernyavsky. And then the pair eat at Brown Derby. Again, kind of she's seen all day. This is not a situation where we don't know where she is for 12 hours at a time. And this makes sense, right? Sounds like school's about to be out or is out. And so she is amongst friends. Now, after dinner, Judy and Robin go to Robin's room. And while there, Judy puts on a red wig that Robin owned. She was kind of just fooling around. There's a picture of her wearing this wig. She herself doesn't have curly red hair, but she's like kind of posing, mugging for the camera with this red wig. And the reason this red wig is going to matter is because this is kind of one of the last times she's seen is with this wig. A short while later, they leave Robin's room and they went to another friend's room, Michelle Morgan's, to hang out for that night.
And look, it's been a while since I've been in college now. It's kind of depressing to think about. It's been about 20 years, as a matter of fact. But those of you who've been to college or are in college now or can barely remember college, this whole night is one that is just so familiar to me. You know, it's sort of towards the end of the year, things are winding down, you're hanging out with friends, you're seeing people at the cafeteria, you're sort of bouncing around people's dorm rooms. I loved living in the dorm for that reason. Like, there are so many days, if I'd gone missing, the story would have been exactly like this. I was in this person's room, then this person's room, and then doing this thing over here. But once again, it introduces, there are just a lot of people who saw her at various times. So one thing we can say for sure is that up to this point, she's alive, she's well, everybody's seeing her, and she's sort of hanging out with people. So at around 10:30, you know, she's still in Michelle's room in Prentice Hall. Some of these times, too, I mean, these times are all from various people. So some of them conflict. Some of them have her doing the same thing or doing different things at the same time. Roll with it. You know, like I said, she's going from place to place. The times are all approximates. So she spends some time in Michelle's room, and she's got this red wig on. She's wearing a trench coat, sunglasses, and a shoulder bag made of fake white leather. This is important because none of those items will ever be seen again. So whatever happened to Judy, apparently she took all this stuff with her. And people would say that she was dressed like a hooker. That was how they described her. And not she was getting ready to go out on the town and ply her trade, but just she had sort of dressed up in this sort of silly outfit, and it made her look like not like the sort of average person you would see out and about. But this was the kind of thing she did to entertain people and to get a laugh, right? And Michelle reported that Judy was in a good mood, and she told Michelle that she had plans to see another individual, Charles Nevels. Judy's relationship with Charles is a little unclear. She'd just gotten out of this really long relationship, 5 years or so, with Jim. I think we've already mentioned one person that she briefly dated. She may have been dating Charlie, or at least in some sort of initial stages of that, or they might have just been friends. But either way, she had plans to go see him and said, hey, I might stop back by your room later. So after that, 11-ish or so, she arrives at nearby Dunbar Hall. Now, all of these dorms are all very close to each other. They're not co-ed. They're by gender. So she's in an all-girls dorm. There's an all-boys dorm. She's actually an RA in the dorm that she's in. So she's a residential advisor, and she has a room to herself, which once again is one of those little details that's going to make this case harder to solve. I mean, the number of times someone disappears when their roommate is like on a trip or not going to be back for a few days. In this case, she doesn't have a roommate. So you lose some of the answers about whether she went back to her apartment or not and when she left, if she did. Either way, she goes over to Dunbar Hall. She stops by a friend of hers, Bernie Caffrey. He was not in his room. She speaks to his roommate for a minute or so before leaving. She then heads to another friend's room, John Becconi, and she spends about 20 minutes there with John and Charlie Nevels, who is there. So she's in the room. She actually takes off the wig, the sunglasses, and the trench coat.
So this kind of goes to her light up a room type of personality that has become a trope within true crime. But I remember being in college, it's an easy, fun night. All your friends live within walking distance and like kind of dressing up something silly, especially if it's like, I don't know, I would put on a trench coat and sunglasses just to be like the mysterious Carmen Sandiego. But she was always there to kind of make people feel good. And she was also very social, as you can tell, going from friend to friend's room. Again, kind of totally normal on a college campus. So around 11:20, Judy and Charles head to his room, which is also in Dunbar Hall. At around midnight, this now brings us to May 24th, 1978, but this is all kind of one night of hanging out. John Becconi stops by Charles Neville's room to return Judy's wig, sunglasses, and trench coat that she had previously taken off. John is supposedly heading to the 7-Eleven, and he reported that, again, Judy was in a good physical and mental condition. So in other words, he didn't report that she seemed sloppy drunk or particularly tired or anxious or anything like that. She seemed like her normal self. On June 1st, police will report that John tells them that Judy came back to his room to pick up the items. Now, this is a minor discrepancy, but either way, she had them. So just in case you missed that, the discrepancy is John first says that he came to Charles's room to return these items to Judy. So she has them. And the reason that matters is we don't see the wig, the sunglasses, and the trench coat again. But about a week later, the police report says that John says, in fact, he didn't go to Charles's room, but Judy came to his room to get the items. The important part is they have them. How important this discrepancy is up for debate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a minor discrepancy. I don't know how important it is. I mean, it's one of those where, like, if you solve the case, you might be like, well, there you go. That's why he said that. Because you're always looking for discrepancies. But the problem is, so many of them are irrelevant. Now, people jump all over discrepancies. I mean, they think, man, if you don't tell the story exactly the same way, then you must be lying. You're probably the killer. You did it. Now, I will say this. I was talking to Aislinn about this, and she was like, I would think you'd remember if you had to get up and do something versus somebody just comes by. Now, actually, that's a really good point. Like, if I had to get up and gather up the wig and the trench coat and everything else and take it somewhere, I would, number one, be irritated by that, and I would remember it. And so when the police asked, I'd be like, oh, shoot, I saw her when I took the stuff over there. Because it would stick out in your mind, right? Because it's a little bit of something different that happened. So it's a little weird that he has this inconsistency, but I can't tell you this breaks the case, right? It must have been him. He's lying about that, and so therefore that happened. But it is a discrepancy, and it's worth pointing out because it sort of shifts exactly when he sees her for the last time, when she leaves, that sort of thing. I think it is important, but we just don't have enough information to make much out of it. And I will tell you, we're going to get into this later about why we don't have much information, but information is limited on this case. It wasn't as well covered at the time as it should have been. There have been some good articles about the case. There are people who are looking into it now, but it is one of those cases where it's just like you feel if more had been done at the time, this wouldn't be a mystery. Or they would have figured this out. But since they didn't, we're now left here trying to piece things together, as Alice said, nearly 50 years later.
So that's not the last of Judy's night that we know of. Judy and Charles spend the next couple of hours hanging out in his room. Though the exact nature of their relationship has not been identified at this point, they were beginning some sort of a romantic relationship. At the same time, Matthew Strope, who worked in a residential security at KSU, reported he noticed the lights on in Judy's dorm room. Note that Judy and Charles are in Charles's dorm room hanging out. But given she's a college student in the late 70s, it's hard to measure the importance of this fact. Maybe a friend or one of the residential advisees who lived there went into her room. I know in my college dorm room, nobody locked their doors. We also had an honor system, but like friends had access to our rooms all the time. So having the lights on could mean that they were left on. Someone came in to borrow a jacket for the night, return something, passing by, use your bathroom, all the different things. We just don't know. And did he see the right light? It's hard to know. Or maybe was it earlier in the night when she was still in her room? So it's not really clear how important this fact is, but we're telling you all these things because there's just so little known about the case.
And I think when I was in college, the only time I turned off the light was when I was asleep. But I didn't have to pay the bill, and I wasn't really conscious of wasting energy. So if you judged whether I was in my room based on whether the light was on, you would have always judged incorrectly. I mean, you would have judged correctly, I don't know, 50% of the time. But so I don't know about that. And this is in true crime, really in the law. We act like, well, he said that, so it must be true. I mean, he's thinking about this a few days later. He's trying to remember if somebody's light was when he walked by. I mean, why in the world would you remember that?
I literally don't remember if my light is on outside that door right now.
Yeah, exactly. And if you asked me 5 days from now, I certainly wouldn't know. So anyway, maybe her light was on, maybe it wasn't. Is it significant? Hard to say.
Okay, so one thing that you may notice, there's a lot happening this night, right? 2 things stand out to me. First of all, some of you may be thinking, wow, she was really busy that night. She was super social. One thing to note is no one was like, oh, she was particularly busy this night. This was, I think, kind of a normal college night, which, man, I miss those days when it was easy to see lots of your friends. So it may have been a particularly, fun and interactive night, but no one has been like, she's usually pretty quiet and keeps to herself and likes reading and going to bed at 9 p.m. But this night she made a point to be out there, whether to establish an alibi or to do X, Y, or Z, or she was upset and wanted to be around friends. There's been no reports of that. That might be the case, but it seems like this is not an out of ordinary day for her. Eating lunch with friends, interacting with people throughout the day, having dinner with friends, going to friends' dorm rooms throughout the night, many different people's dorm rooms, hanging out with people that she may be starting a romantic relationship with. So the first thing is, don't judge maybe your typical Tuesday night with this one. I think this is a pretty regular night for her. And second, this is why this case is so mind-boggling to me. She was around so many people, and there were so many points of reference throughout the night, yet she still disappears without a trace.
So the next time is really the most important. Charlie Nevels will report that Judy left his room in Dunbar Hall at around 2:30 a.m. So he sort of says bye to her, and he sees her exiting the dorm via the stairwell. He is, as far as we know, other than some other sightings we're going to talk about later, he's the last confirmed. We'll say that. He is the last confirmed person to see Judy, 2:30 a.m. Now, he didn't know exactly where she was going next, but he assumed that it was back to her dorm room for the night. He would later be polygraphed, and he did pass that. Now, the walk from Dunbar Hall to Judy's dorm at Engelman Hall was less than 100 yards. It's sometimes said to be 300 yards. That is wrong. It is 100 yards, 300 feet, literally a football field. That's how far she had to walk. It should have taken her 5 minutes. If it took her 5 minutes, 5 minutes is probably a little bit of a stretch. Basically, she would have left the dorm. She would have had to walk across a street onto the next sidewalk between 2 dorms. She would have been heading downhill while she did this. And it was sort of said that if you were at the bottom of the hill and she was at the top, you would see her coming. If somebody was down there, they would be in a position to sort of know that she was going to get there before maybe she would see them. Now, it's sometimes said there was a parking lot that she had to cross. This appears not to be true. There's a parking lot there now, but it doesn't seem like it was there at the time. It seems like one of those dorms she had to walk between was eventually torn down and turned to a parking lot. Unsurprisingly, the campus has changed a lot in the last 50 years. I mean, where I went to college, Alabama, has changed so much. I mean, I can't even find anything now. And that was only 20 years ago. It's hard to even imagine how different it is. The parking lot thing is kind of important, though, because if you're thinking about what happened to her, this is such a short distance, and it isn't going to take much time. And if someone's going to grab her, having a parking lot, you can imagine somebody sitting there, they see a woman walking alone, and they start to think, I'm going to take this target of opportunity basically and do something. You might be thinking, how is it possible that no one else saw her on this busy college campus walking to her dorm room? Well, I want to remind you a few things. Number one, we're approaching the Memorial Day weekend. School is pretty much wrapping up. The school is a ghost town at this point. It really is just sort of the RAs who are living there and sort of managing things, some few students who are there. That's about it. At the time, Kent was a commuter campus. There were a lot of commuters, so there wouldn't have been a lot of people there anyway, and the people in the dorms had pretty much already cleared out. It's also 2:30 in the morning, so a lot of people were asleep. And I'll just tell you, I remember going to college, a very large campus with a lot of people, staying up really late all the time. And we would often go wandering through campus. We'd go smoke a cigar or whatever. We'd just take off in the middle of the night. And it was not unusual to not see a single person out that late. So it does not surprise me that no one saw her. Obviously, there are no security cameras. There's nothing like that. All we have is Charlie saying, I saw her leave, and I assumed she was going home. And she was walking literally 100 yards from one dorm to another on a walk that should have taken her a matter of minutes. But it seems like something happened in that period, and she was never seen again. So let's jump forward. And let me just go ahead and tell you this. This is my opinion, and I'm going to go ahead and ruin the rest of the episode for you. Everything else we're going to talk about in the timeline, in my opinion, is a complete waste of time. Like, we're going to give you a whole bunch of sightings of people who saw her here and saw her there and all this other stuff. They're all fake, okay? Nobody saw her in any of these places. And I'll tell you why I think that. Because, as we said, what she was wearing that day has never been found. She wasn't wearing the red wig the next day. That stuff would have been in her dorm room. It wasn't. So I am of the opinion that this is the moment. By this point, something happened to her. So with that spoiler given, 1:30 the next day. So David Horning will later report to police that he saw a woman matching Judy's physical description and clothing at a bus stop on Main Street near Dreck's sub shop.
And 1:30 in the afternoon. So
yeah, 1:30
now
in the
we're
afternoon.
into the broad daylight.
Yeah, 1:30 p.m. Yeah, so basically the night finishes, the sun rises, he sees this. He says that a large yellow vehicle pulled up near the stop and the girl got in, or depending on how the story is told, was pulled in to the vehicle. The car sort of pulled away abruptly and headed westbound on Route 59. Now, there's one thing that's interesting about this, and it lends it a little bit more credibility despite what I just said. There had been reports that Judy had plans to go home that day to Avon Lake to pick up a car. And this car, depending on who you ask, was either going to be used to drive on a trip over Memorial Day weekend with some friends, or she was going to take it back to campus to sort of pack up her dorm room for the summer. Because remember, classes are closing down. A bus would have been one way to do that. It's about an hour from where she was to her home. Now, there's probably no direct route. She'd probably have to go to Cleveland and change. But the thing about this story, and the thing that we really have not been able to nail down, if she had intentions of going home, she needed a way to get there. And it's entirely unclear what her plans were. If she planned to go by bus, and these are the kind of things that I hope, if the cold case unit out there starts working on it, they'll try and nail these things down. If she was planning to go home the next day, that's actually a pretty important fact, because whoever it was that was going to go with her, to my knowledge, never reported her missing. There's no like, she was supposed to meet me and we were going to carpool up there. Because one of the things you could do back in the day is you did share rides, right? And frankly, you did this until recently. I don't know if people still do this on campus or not, but I can remember boards, and you would just like put, need a ride to Birmingham on Saturday. And people would call you and be like, yeah, we'll split the gas money, right? And you'd ride together. So that kind of thing would happen. But it's unclear how she planned to get up there to get this car. And she wasn't going to walk. She wasn't going to ride her bike. And I don't think she had a car on campus. So that's sort of a mystery that we don't know. But you could imagine she's going to the bus stop to catch that bus, to go back home, to get the car, and somebody grabs her. Now, would she be, quote unquote, dressed like a hooker for this trip? Hard to believe. I don't really take this sighting seriously.
So essentially, no one sees her since Tuesday night going into Wednesday morning. By Friday, May 26th, Judy's family starts to get really concerned because Judy had not come home and they had not heard from her. And her mom called her several times, but no one ever answered. And there was nothing they could do. So they did what any other worried parents would do. They drove the hour or so to Kent State to literally go to her dorm room and try to figure out what was going on. They were worried, so worried that they were going to take matters into their own hands. Now, they found her makeup and her money and glasses at her apartment. And her parents said that Judy would never have left for any period of time without her glasses because she needed them. So there were other things left there, of course, but those three things in particular, like if you wear makeup every day, I have like a lip gloss that I wear every day in my purse, because it's always with me, for example. So you leave these things behind, and money, you need money if you want to leave for any extended period of time, especially if you want to start a new life, and glasses, which help you see. These are all things that you would leave behind if you were going to come right back, or you would take with you if you came back to your apartment before you left somewhere. So they were really concerned to find these things there because it indicates that Judy seems to have gone out that night, not come home, and not planned to not come home. At 4:35 p.m. that day, that Friday, Michelle Chabot, the resident director of Prentice Hall, reports Judy missing to the Kent State University Police. So approximately 3 days after the last sighting is the first time she's reported missing. Shortly after, she's reported missing to Avon Lake PD as well, Judy's hometown. This isn't that surprising because we don't exactly know where she is. We thought she was going to go home. It's only about an hour away. So if you can get more kind of bolos out there, the better. That's why she's reported missing in both places, both where she was last seen and where they thought she was going to go home to. Now, the police response was muted initially as it's Memorial Day weekend. There's no indication of foul play. And note that her family doesn't report her missing first. They first drive down to make sure what's going on before the reports come in, which I think is, again, pretty normal. She is a college student. Maybe her phone was out of service. We don't have cell phones at this time. But the important thing to note is 3 days have passed before she's reported missing. And even once she's reported missing, nothing's really done by the police.
And look, as I said, the beat stays the same, right? What do we see so often in these cases? It takes a few days to get reported to the police because nobody really knows whether they're missing or not. Then it is. And what do the police say? No, they'll turn up. They'll turn up. She probably just ran off some, college kids, right? And they will later say, the police at Kent State will later say that they would get multiple missing persons reports every week. Every week, somebody would call and think their kid was missing. And then, and I think one of the people who now I think is the chief of police, I'm probably misstating that, but somebody who'd been there for a long time, said that her case is the only missing persons case that they never resolved. Like all the other missing persons cases they ever had at Kent State University, always resolved on their own, basically. And so they fully expect, okay, fine. Yeah, she wasn't going in with her glasses. Sure. Right. But that's what they think is going to happen. They're going to find her, and they never do. And so you have this delay in reporting. You have this delay in taking this seriously. And once again, you can see how these things are starting to pile onto each other to create the situation where we are talking about this on a podcast in 2024.
But no, this isn't a complete dereliction of duty by law enforcement. Sometimes you'll hear that there was no missing persons report officially filed for a week, but that's not exactly true here. Judy is entered as a missing person in the system by law enforcement by Saturday, May 27th. That is almost 4.5 days after she's last seen, but it is an entire week. And they don't do nothing. Law enforcement contacts the county jail, hospitals, and the campus health center to see if maybe Judy is there. And there is unfortunately no sign of Judy anywhere you would expect her to be.
And look, there's another problem with this case that I think should already be apparent, and we have seen this in some of the other cases that we've covered. I love campus police. I mean, I got to tell you, when I was in college and the police would show up, which they did on a few occasions, when it was the campus police, it was always like, whew, campus police, because they're going to take care of us, right? They were sort of glorified babysitters. They would show up and they'd be like, guys, should you really be burning this couch? And we would say, no, sir,
What?
We shouldn't. And they'd be like, okay, well, when it burns out, don't light another one. And then they would drive off, right? And we'd be like, all right, officer, we'll see you later. Right. If the city police showed up, it was like, why are you people committing arson? What are you doing? You're all under arrest. You're all going to prison, right? Like, that's the way they viewed it. And oftentimes you had sort of the campus police and the city police, and they're fighting each other, and, they hate each other because they don't think the campus police are real cops, and the campus police think the city police need to stop hating the university kids who bring in all the money, and it's just like everybody hates everybody, right? But the thing about the city police is they have more resources, more experience, and more training in handling these complicated situations. Having the Kent State University campus police investigate this is probably not the best thing for Judy, but that's the situation that we're going to have. So May 30th, 1978, officers are starting to take this a little bit more seriously. They're starting to talk to people around Kent State regarding Judy's disappearance. They talked to many of the people that we have talked about earlier up to this point who saw her the day and night that she went missing. And they're able to sort of piece together this timeline, the same timeline that we gave you of her last known movements. The situation is difficult. There are so many people who are gone from campus for the holiday. There are far fewer witnesses than you would expect, and far fewer witnesses than there might normally have been. I mean, give you an example of this. It's been reported, and this has never been solidified, that when you would go into the dorms at Kent State, you would sign in. And there were a lot of dorms that are like this. They have one entrance, you go in, you sign in, you go to your room. Number one, unclear if Judy would have to do that anyway because she's an RA. But number two, if she didn't sign in that night, it doesn't mean she didn't walk into that dorm room. Everything was just more laid back. Everything was less serious. And it's just hard to say that any of that shows us really anything about this case. They contact some professors and they confirm that Judy had not been seen in any classes since May 23rd. They start to distribute Judy's photo, and they send it to the Kent State University News Service for distribution to local newspapers and TV stations. They provide some information to the local radio. So they're starting to try and get the media involved. And it's the 70s, but hey, they still know. They know about crowdsourcing, right? And they're trying to do that using the tools that they have. Now, they were at the college towers on campus when they were approached by a resident by the name of Bill Jones. He claimed that he might have information on the missing person. He reported seeing a young woman who was tall with long black hair being escorted out of the main door of the building by two men who were white. That's really the only description he could give. The woman, he said, appeared spaced out, and Bill heard her say, "I haven't been back to my room since Thursday." Now, it's not clear when this reported incident occurred, and there is a big problem with it. Judy was 5'4", 110 pounds maybe. Not a person I think typically you would describe as tall. Now, people get heights wrong all the time, but 5'4" is not tall. So he definitely got that part right, which makes you doubt sort of the rest of it as well. And this seems like someone who's trying to be helpful, trying to provide some information, but probably doesn't actually have any real information.
And what we can note from the timeline that police are able to put together is look how many people she talks to and interacts with Tuesday, the last real day she's interacting with people. There are really essentially no credible sightings of her after Tuesday. Doesn't get lunch with a friend, doesn't meet up with a friend to return a wig, nothing. Because remember, that wig's not hers. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So even those words like, "I haven't been back to my dorm since Thursday," where was she Wednesday and Thursday? It's certainly not her normal kind of social patterns to not be seen by a single person. So that brings us to May 31st, 1978. At 1 a.m., a man named John Alexander recalled seeing a young woman matching Judy's description at a bar called The Tavern. He said the woman paid her bar tab and left. Now, like we said, all of these sightings are unlikely to be Judy, but it's noteworthy that Judy has been to this bar before. Again, I think you're beginning to see the effects of media getting involved. People want to be helpful. They all, we always say, see something, say something, right? Like if it's a bad tip, just throw it out. And the problem with these tips is they're coming in, but there's nothing other than a stranger seeing a woman at a bar that matches her description. There's nothing else here. There's no scar. There's no car that matches her. So I think this is probably just someone trying to be helpful, but really probably has nothing to do with Judy.
So the good thing about this story is, while there's not a whole lot of information, we have managed to put together a pretty significant outline on this one. So I think we're going to break our streak on this case and actually do 2 episodes on Judy. So, we've been in a lot of 1-episode cases.
I know.
I think this one deserves 2.
You guys asked for 1-episode cases, and we did a lot of them.
Yeah, but I think, we're about halfway through, so I think this is probably a good place to stop. We have a situation where the police are looking for Judy, and we're starting to see some of these, what I'm going to call trash tips coming in. You have these tips that are coming in from various people, but it doesn't seem like they're really going anywhere. And
let me just say, though, trash tips only in the sense that it's probably not going to solve or have to do with Judy. But if you have a tip, put it in. Let the police figure out what's trash and what's not. I mean, if it has absolutely nothing, like you think you saw Judy and Bora Bora the next day, probably not her. But we only say trash tip in the sense of we're trying to figure out what happened to Judy. But these tips, I'm glad they're coming in. It means that the word about Judy is getting out. That's the good news about these tips.
Our listeners' tips are never trash. So I wasn't accusing any of you of being trashy. But yeah, we got a lot more to talk about. We're going to talk about some of the searches that were done and some of the investigation that starts to happen. We're going to talk about some of the possibilities as far as theories about this case. We're going to talk about some of the suspects. And look, I'd love to tell you that at the end of this case, we're going to solve it and we're going to know exactly what happened to Judy. That is probably not going to happen, but you never know. If you have any information about this, I know it's an old case, but it isn't that old, and it's not unsolvable. And there may have been people on campus or around campus who saw something, or there may be people who weren't even alive at the time who've heard something. We talked about this before. When people do bad things to each other, it is incredibly rare that they never say anything, that they never mention it again, that there's not some sort of rumor. That almost never happens. And I think we have to try and provide some sort of information on cases like this, because Judy's case seems utterly mysterious, but it can literally be one clue that breaks it. Right now, as we are doing this case, we talked about Aisha Degree a lot. It's a case that really stuck with us. It's a really important case to us. It's a case that's 24 years old that we never thought was going to be solved or even really have any new information in it. And there's all this sort of breaking news and breaking information. And you're starting to see little things, little tips come in that may solve that case, or at least give us some idea of what happened. That can happen in this case too. And I'm going to challenge all of you to think about this and think about, particularly if you're in Ohio, if you're around Kent State, think about whether or not you have information that might possibly give this family some closure and help us find out what happened to Judy. Look, if you'd rather talk to us than the police, I fully understand. We're so personable. Shoot us an email, prosecutorspod@gmail.com. Reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever floats your boat, at prosecutorspod. Join us on Patreon, and you can see these episodes. I mean, literally, if you're listening to this, you are in the future. You were listening to this in November. We were recording this before any of our October episodes have even come out. You could have been here live listening to this, providing your input, but you're not. You're stuck in November when it's cold and rainy and there's an election and you're ready for it to be over. You could have been here with us right now. So join Patreon. It's $3 a month, and you can take part in these recordings early and ad-free. Alice, do you want to answer some questions?
Let's do it. Yes, absolutely.
Let's do it. Okay. We have so many of these. Alice and I have talked about doing like a special episode.
We'll do one.
Answer questions.
That'll be a fun
should.
holiday one, maybe like a Thanksgiving or Christmas. Who really wants to listen about murder and mayhem at the holidays? Maybe we'll do some fun Q&As.
Okay. This is from Sarah. And Alice, this one's right down your alley.
Okay.
So I'm going to let you answer this one. For disappearances, some may be due to aliens, but I would love to hear your thoughts on whether or not some disappearances could be due to people being pulled through the space-time continuum. Could they have been on a branched timeline and have been taken back to the sacred timeline, Loki style? Keep up the great work.
So those of you who haven't heard my answer to my obsession with singularities as a child that has carried over into adulthood, no, my answer probably is like, yeah, that's totally possible. But let me say this. I think this is a good thing. You know how they always say when you grow up, you lose your sense of wonder, childlike wonder, whatever it is, and you become jaded in life. That may be true, but I will say being a lawyer, a prosecutor, doing this podcast, learning about stories that I didn't personally investigate or prosecute. So I've gotten to like see a wider array of cases throughout the world and time. I think I get my sense of wonder more and more every day. Like truly, I can't rule out anything anymore, especially when you do these like very thorough investigations. I think we do deep dives, and I'm like, surely if you research something to the bone, you've read every scrap of paper, every report on this case, surely there's an answer there somewhere, right? And there are so many cases where I am just left with like nothing rational or part of this dimension makes sense. So it must be part of the upside down or some sort of portal into another space. That's my only answer for it. So all to say is, thanks to this podcast, I think my sense of wonder and possibility of anything is possible is truly widened. So I don't say that lightly. Yeah, absolutely could be a time continuum.
I mean, I will say this. I love you guys, but since we started doing this podcast, I have been introduced to some very strange people with very strange ideas. And one of the ideas I found out about recently is there's this whole theory that the Malaysian Airlines plane that disappeared flew through a portal into another dimension, and that's what happened to it. I think that's highly unlikely, number one, and to say that. But I mean, that is something people think. And I've told my dog story before about how I saw that dog and then I kept walking and then I saw the same dog and it freaked me out. Well, maybe I walked through a portal. Maybe in that other timeline, I am a missing person and I disappeared and, you know, nobody knows what happened, but it was all the dog's fault. I mean, that could be true. I mean, look, I don't know. Who knows? Some of these cases are so weird, you almost wonder, right? Like these people, I mean, the Brian Schaefer case is one of them. It's like, how did that guy do that? Even if he got out of the bar, and I think a lot of people think he probably got out of the bar because probably there were doors that weren't covered by cameras. There almost certainly were. But how did he get out of this camera covered area and nobody ever see him? You know, what happened to him? Where'd he go? You know, I don't know. More and more people keep telling me that they think he's on an island somewhere playing Pearl Jam songs. I mean, maybe, but I don't think that's likely. So we like to keep an open mind. Maybe one day we'll do dimensional time slip cases, because there are these famous cases about people who believe they went through some sort of dimensional portal. Like there's one case, I think it's out of Australia, about a guy who was flying a plane and he was on with air traffic control. It was like flying like a single person plane, talking about like all this weird stuff that was happening around him, and he was seeing all this weird stuff, and then his plane disappeared and he was never found. And the common theory is that he either was losing his mind or he was committing suicide or something like that, and just crashed his plane, and it's hard to find small planes. That's the common theory. But the more interesting theory is that he really did just fly through a portal or whatever. Okay.
I'm totally bought it. Like, I would say 4 years ago, Brett, I was like squarely in the not paranormal world. Maybe it's my like constantly talking to you.
That's what it is, you know,
maybe that's what it
was
is,
4
actually.
years ago.
I never even thought about that. I thought, you know, whenever I wake up from a dream where something seems so real, it's an alternate universe, I'm like, is this the dream or is that the dream?
There you go.
I've hung out with you too much, and it's a good thing.
All right, we'll do one more. This is from Emily Monica. She wants to know, what do you seek out to lighten your spirit that cheers you up or makes you laugh?
Oh, what a happy question. I love that. You can go first.
Well, I mean, my kids are the funniest thing ever, right? I mean, but I don't really seek them out. They just do funny things all the time. And it's
They
hilarious. My
really
wife and
are
I,
so funny.
my wife and I were talking about I won't embarrass my daughter for all time by telling the story, but one of the funny things that happened recently, and we were just cackling. But I like sketch comedy type stuff on YouTube. Like I love just silly people doing silly stuff. So if you're into sports, there's SEC Shorts, which are these guys and gals who make fun of the SEC, which is the football conference. Every week they put out a new, and they're just hilarious. Like 5 minutes long. They're hilarious. You know, I like things like the epic voice guy who does the like realistic trailers or whatever. It's like a trailer for a movie, but it makes fun of the movie the whole time. Love that stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that I like. Is totally nerdy, you know, and embarrassing, but that's the best I can do, I guess.
No, I think that's right. Spending time with my kids, but also like more and more, the best advice I ever got, And I think it applies to kids, but also you. I just now implement all the parenting tips that people give me on myself if I'm having a bad day. There are 3. Maybe there's like you doctors out there, maybe you can tell me that this is like scientifically based. The 3 things are like if your kid or you are melting down, like stuck in a pit of despair, spiraling downwards, out of control, you're like, things are bad. What can you do? Number 1, eat a banana outside. This is literally, this has been told to me by multiple different people. It's like, I think it's, being outside takes you out of your element. There's sunlight, probably fresh air. Maybe there's something about potassium. I don't know. But so if you're like in a pit of despair right now, walk outside and eat a banana. So that's number 1. And it works for my kids. I literally open the door and I'm like, get outside. And they're like, what? And I hand them a banana and they think it's the funniest thing ever. And then we all start laughing and they eat a banana. Number 2, get in a bath. Right? Like water. Just again, I think it's the whole changing your elements thing. So like a wonderful, like who doesn't love a good bath bomb? Am I right? Number 3 is literally getting out in the outdoors. So we live across the street from like, really it's just overgrown weeds. But this again is looking through the eyes of, you choosing your joy. Is we call it the magic forest. And it's literally just a patch of, there's woods, but it's overgrown and there's probably like, lots of scorpions and stuff in there. But if people are melting down or I'm just having like a tough day, work is like bad, maybe, people are yelling at me and I'm like, I just like got to clear my head. We always call it, let's take a walk to the magic forest, which is literally across the street. It's a shorter walk than Judy had to take. And just like stand in the middle of the woods and like look up and kind of just remember that it's okay. These trees have been around for a long time, hundreds of years, in fact, and it's all going to be okay. And then, someone makes some sort of fart joke and we all laugh.
The other one I'm going to give, there are 2 things, just mindless videos that I love. My wife actually loves one of them. One of them is the hydraulic press channel. So there's basically this channel, this dude in like Sweden or something, and he owns a hydraulic press. And he just squishes things in the hydraulic press. So he'll take like, the coolest thing is when he does like a whole bunch of like Play-Doh or something and he squishes it and like all the Play-Doh like comes out in this, but it'll be like, what can stand the highest pressure before it breaks? So, paper, for instance, like he'll compress paper and then all of a sudden it like, the paper goes everywhere.
Awesome.
It is awesome.
Similarly, I now realize that I fall into a category watching people clean or mow their lawns in like those like condensed videos, where you like speed it up. So like you clean an entire room that took 4 hours in like 30 seconds or mowing the lawn.
People make a ton of money making those videos.
Apparently mowing your lawn in that fashion is like the highest hit per whatever on YouTube. Who knew?
Have you ever seen the people
we should do that.
Shaving the soap?
Shaving with soap?
No, the soap. So they have like a block of soap with like all sorts of like different colors. And they slice like a grid into it. And then they take a knife and they run it across it and cut off the top layer.
So many
and it is so soothing to see them do this.
And then I don't know if we get targeted with the same mindless videos, but do you get targeted with the like utterly disgusting rugs that have been like in a dumpster and then they like clean it for
No.
like it's sped up, but it's like you pressure wash it for like 8 hours, it looks like, to get like a slightly less disgusting looking rug. I get so many of those videos and I watch all of them.
The last one I'll suggest is the red hot ball videos. So basically,
okay, this makes so much sense, by the way, why our social media feed is filled with these types of videos. I'm always like, well, who is watching these videos? It's you in the hydraulic press.
It is me.
That's so funny. I've been wondering why our feed has all of these videos.
So the red hot ball, basically they take a metal ball and they heat it up until it's red hot and they drop it in different liquids. So like, they'll drop it in like different alcohols and some of them will just burst into flames, right? And shatter the glass. And it's really interesting, like what liquids disperse the heat in a way that doesn't break the glass or make it all boil out. Like glue, for instance. They drop it in glue and the glue's like, whatever, hot ball, I don't care about you. Whereas like, water and various other things is really neat. Or ice. They have like a block of ice and they'll drop the red hot ball and it'll melt into the block of ice. And it's like, how far is it going to go? Anyways.
I think
great
we've just
videos.
encouraged everyone to go spend like mindless hours watching these videos, but there's a science behind it. You know, why I think the New York Times did an article about this, why like mindless games like Candy Crush are actually played by people with very demanding jobs because your brain needs an off trigger, but high performing brains don't want to sit and do nothing. Like they still want to do something,
Right.
which is why these videos that are mindless are like the perfect reprieve for apparently anxiety ridden brains like ours.
Look, I wish the number of times I'm going to go sit outside and just enjoy the light. I can't do that. Like, I can go sit at the bar like I did today. You know, my blessed wife with the kids, and I'm at the bar by myself, drinking a Sapporo, waiting on my food to get ready. That was great. But I also had my phone, and I was like, you know,
Let's watch some videos.
making people mad on Facebook or something, or watching videos. Like, I can do that, but I can't take a walk. I hate taking walks. I can't sit. I can't do any of that. I need something to be going on. So, like, sitting on the couch with the red hot balls burning through ice, that's amazing. I love it.
This is awesome. Well, I hope this has brought a smile to your face. We are still going to come back next time and talk more about Judy.
Yes, we are. And like I said, we got a lot more to talk about. Don't miss it. I would tell you to dive down the rabbit holes on this case. There aren't that many to dive down, unfortunately. I know that True Crime Garage did a couple episodes on this case. Those guys are always great. But I'll tell you where I would go if I were you. We talked earlier about Dave O'Brien from the Chronicle Telegram. He actually went on the Missing podcast. And, you know, that's our buddies from Missing Maura Murray, Tim and Lance, do that podcast. And so they interviewed him. He's got a lot of great information. That was a really good episode. So if you're looking for more on this before we come back next week, I recommend that. But otherwise, we will be back to talk more about this case. But until then, I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us on a Saturday night.
So, I forgot to say, okay, so this is like mixing different podcasts, but it's okay. So I was recording an episode of American Justice yesterday about one of my best friends from college's great-grandfather, something like that, because he was in the mob. Because it was like, make sure you know how to pronounce the last name. And I was like, I know how to pronounce his last name. Because I know the mobster's great-granddaughter.
Yeah. There you go. Look at you.
Well, it was
Bragging about your other podcast.
Well, I'm not bragging about it. I was just so excited. I was like, I'm recording a true crime podcast about your family member.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like good because, you know, he's not a victim. He's the perpetrator, but you know.
Right. Yeah, everybody's got a history.
Everybody's got a history.
Are you looking for a new job or want a career change? Look no further than Monster.com. Need a little help standing out? Our expert resume writing services will make sure you shine. Want to brush up on your interview skills? Engage with our AI interview prep tool. Want some advice on negotiating your new salary? Visit our salary tools and extensive library of career advice articles, and you'll have all the tips and tricks you'll need to succeed. Visit Monster.com today and take the first step towards your career. Monster.com. Find your right job fit.